The first customer I ever rang up paid in teeth, and I gave him correct change. I want to tell you how I knew what correct change was, in teeth, but that comes later, and you would not believe it yet. You have to know me back when I was somebody first, and then when I was nobody, because I think the store only takes you at the bottom. The store shops for people the way people shop for boots. It likes them broken in. My name is Dale Pruitt. For 30 years I owned Pruitt Floor and Tile in Chillicothe, Ohio. Commercial flooring mostly. Schools, churches, the county building. If you ever walked across a shiny hallway in southern Ohio and your shoes squeaked, there's a decent chance that squeak was mine. I had 11 guys on payroll, a warehouse off Bridge Street, and a wife named Carol who could make a pot roast that would bring a grown man to tears. We had a brick house on Bellevue with a porch swing. I drank 2 beers on Friday and 1 on Saturday and felt like that was living, because it was. I'll tell you a small thing and I want you to remember it because I didn't. In 1993, the week before I bid on my first big contract, I found a brass token in the pocket of a coat I bought secondhand. About the size of a $50, worn smooth, with a design on it I could never quite make out. Looked like a door maybe, or a mouth. I told Carol it was my lucky coin, mostly as a joke. I carried it 30 years. I won that contract and the next one and the one after that, and my luck ran so steady and so long that I stopped calling it luck and started calling it me. Then it all came apart, and here's the part I still chew on. It didn't come apart the way businesses usually do, slow, with warnings. It came apart all at once, in one autumn, like a bill coming due. The county pulled a contract on a technicality nobody could explain to me twice the same way. My best foreman took a job in Columbus. A pipe let go over the warehouse in October and drowned $400,000 of inventory, and the insurance man found a clause. The bank found a clause too. Everybody found clauses that fall. And somewhere in the middle of it, I reached into my pocket at the worst meeting of my life, and the token was gone. I never found it. I remember thinking stupidly, that's it then, like a man whose watch stops at the exact minute of the wreck. Carol stayed through the house going. She didn't stay through what I turned into after, and I don't blame her, because I wouldn't have stayed with me either. I got quiet and mean in the sad way, not the loud way. She went to her sister's in Dayton. The divorce was polite. The Buick lasted me 8 months as a bedroom before the transmission quit, and after that it was a storage unit I wasn't supposed to be sleeping in, and after that it was walking. You want to know what the bottom looks like? It looks like Dot's Diner at 6 in the morning. Nursing the dollar coffee because Dot lets you sit if you buy something, and doing the math on whether a man of 57 with bad knees and a repossessed life is worth the trouble of continuing. I'd stopped fighting it by then. That's the honest truth. I wasn't planning anything. I was just done steering. I figured I'd drift until I stopped, the way a cart rolls to the soft spot in a parking lot, and wherever I stopped, fine. A ditch would do. Dot used to slide me a sausage patty she'd made by mistake. She made a lot of mistakes that winter, and I want it said somewhere that Dot Ellison is a good woman. It was raining the day I found the store. Cold March rain, the kind that gets in under your collar and files a report. I was walking the shopping block on Paint Street with my shoulders up around my ears. You'd know the block if you saw it. Verizon store, a nail salon, Kepler's shoes with the paper in the windows since 2019, a vape shop breathing mango smell out its door. I had walked that block maybe 200 times that winter because it had awnings. Between Kepler's and the vape shop there was a store. I stopped in the rain and looked at it, and my first thought was not fear. My first thought was, I'm losing it, because I would have sworn on Carol's pot roast that yesterday there was nothing between Kepler's and the vape shop but 9 feet of bricked over wall with half a mural of a cardinal on it. Now there was a deep doorway, and a wooden storefront painted a green so dark it read black in the rain, and gold letters on the glass that said, General Goods. No hours posted, no neon. In the window there was a hand-lettered card, the kind of thing a barber might put out. It said, Help Wanted, and under that, smaller, Must be honest, must be finished. I stood there getting rained on and explained it to myself, and the explanation went down easy. I've been walking with my head down for months. Stores turn over. Somebody had leased the space, knocked out the brick, done a fast renovation. I'd just never looked up. That's what I told myself, and I want you to notice how reasonable it was. Because everything that winter had a reasonable explanation right up until it didn't. Also, and I'll just say it plain, it was raining, and I was finished. The card might as well have had my picture on it. The door opened before my hand reached it. Not by itself, nothing like that. An old man opened it, from inside, at the exact moment a man opens a door for someone he's been watching come up the walk. He was small and neat, in a gray vest and sleeve garters like a bank teller out of an old photograph, with white hair combed wet and eyes the color of creek water. Warm inside. It smelled like cedar and gun oil, and underneath that something I can only call familiar, like a memory with the label steamed off. "You're late," the old man said and handed me a broom. I'd like to tell you I asked questions. I took the broom. When you've been nobody long enough, somebody handing you a task feels like being handed a name. I swept that store for 2 hours while he worked behind the counter with his back to me. And I'm not going to describe the store yet, partly because you wouldn't believe the shelves and partly because I made myself not look too hard that first day. A man knows when not to look. I swept. At dark, he took the broom, pressed a coin into my hand and said, "Same time tomorrow, Dale." I was half a block away, standing under the vape shop's awning with the coin heavy as a sinker in my fist, before it landed on me that I had never told him my name. I turned it over the way I'd turned over the wall. Dot knew my name. Half the block knew my name, the way small towns know the man who used to be somebody. He'd have heard it around. Sure he had. But I stood there a long minute in the mango smell and the rain, and I couldn't make it sit right, because of the other thing. The thing I didn't want to look at, same as the shelves. He'd said it the way you say a name you've been saying for 30 years. The old man's name was Abel. Just Abel. I asked his last name on my 3rd day, and he looked at me the way you look at a man who has asked for the salt at a funeral. So I let it go. I came back every morning at 7. He never told me to. He'd just said, "Same time tomorrow," that first night. And I found out that when Abel said a thing, the thing had a way of already being true. I swept. I dusted shelves I was allowed to dust. I hauled crates up from a cellar I was only allowed 3 steps into, where the cold came up around my ankles like water. He paid me every dusk in old coins, and the pawn man on 2nd Street stopped meeting my eyes but never stopped paying. And inside 2 weeks I had a room at the Traveler's Rest with a door that locked and a shower that ran hot. I ate at Dot's like a paying customer. I bought Dot a slice of her own pie one morning just to watch her laugh. "Where in the world are you working, Dale?" she asked me. "General store on paint," I said, "between Kepler's and the vape place." Dot's a kind woman, so she kept her face kind. But I watched her go through the block in her head, storefront by storefront, and come up with 9 feet of bricked wall and half a cardinal. "Huh," is all she said. I told myself she just hadn't looked up lately either. That excuse was getting worn, but it still fit, so I wore it. Let me tell you about the store now, some of it. It was deeper than it should have been. From the street, it looked like it might run 60 feet back. Inside, I never found the back. The aisles went on into a brown dark that the hanging bulbs didn't argue with, and Abel told me on the 2nd day, without turning around, "You keep to the lit rows, Dale." He didn't say "or else." Nothing in that store came with an "or else." The "or else" was in the walls. The lit rows were strange enough. There was a whole aisle of ammunition, and maybe a third of it was normal. Boxes of 12 gauge and 30-06, dusty and honest. The rest was in calibers I'd never heard of, in boxes with no writing, and one shelf of loose rounds sorted in glass jars by color of the metal. Silver, sure. Also a metal that was green without being painted, and one jar of rounds so black they were hard to count, like the eye slid off them. There were knives in a case, and bundled arrows, and coils of thin silver wire on spools like fishing line. There were jars of dried things with twine around the lids. There was a shelf of plain mason jars that appeared to hold water, except the water leaned when you walked past, the way a dog leans to keep you in view. And there was the tall case by the counter, black walnut and thick old glass, always locked. 3 things lived in it. A crossbow so old the wood had gone the color of a violin, with writing on the stock in an alphabet that made my back teeth hurt. A spearhead the size of my forearm that held light like 4 in the afternoon holds it, even at closing, even in the dark. And a claw, black, curved, long as a man's boot, with a shine down the edge like it had opinions. Abel caught me looking at the case my first week and said, "You don't dust that one. You don't breathe on that one." Then, softer, like a man reciting a fact about the weather, "Everything in this store is for sale, Dale. Nothing in this store is free. Those three have been waiting a long time for the customer who can pay." The customers. Lord, the customers. They came at all hours and no hours. Some of them were just people, or close to it. Hard-used men and women in canvas and flannel who bought silver wire and green rounds and salt in 50-pound bags, who paid in cash and gold and once from a duffel in what I am fairly sure was a folded flag from some war I couldn't place. They had a way of standing so they could see the door. They had old marks on their hands and necks, healed bad. They knew Abel and Abel knew them, and they looked at me the first month the way you look at the new dog before you know if it bites. One of them was a woman named Reyes, 40s, gray coming in at the temple, a voice like she'd been yelling across a river all her life. She bought spooled silver by the pound and paid in coin, and one evening that October she also bought information. That's what she called it, plain as bread. She put money on the counter and said, "The pack out of Athens County, are they buying?" And Abel told her a date and a road, and she nodded like she'd bought a can of beans. "Werewolves," she said to me on her way out, friendly, because I must have had a face on. "They don't come in on the new moon. You'll learn the calendar." She said it exactly like a woman telling the new hire when the delivery truck comes. And here's the thing I had to keep folding up smaller and smaller so it would fit in my head. Some of the customers weren't people. I don't mean they were rough. I mean the big polite fellow in the good wool coat whose shadow didn't do what the light said it should. I mean the thin gray gentleman who bought one of the jars I'd learned not to look at straight on, and paid with a song, one note of it, into a little brass horn Abel kept under the counter, and I had to sit down after, because the note had my mother's voice in it. I explained each one to myself as I went. Trick of the light, tired eyes, a cold coming on. I was getting to be a craftsman of explanations. I could build one out of anything. The rules helped, because rules make a job feel like a job. Abel gave them to me one at a time, never twice. Keep to the lit rows. Never follow a customer out the door, not one step, no matter what you see through the glass when it swings. Never touch a customer, and never let one touch you. And if one tries, stand still, because the store handles it. Everyone pays before they leave, everyone, and you never wave anything off, not a nickel. Kindness is for outside. And if the lamp over the door burns red, you put your eyes on your shoes and you keep them there until it burns yellow again, and you do not listen to anything the red light says to you. Spring went to summer and I hardly noticed it go by. The store has no weather in it. A man with a dry room and steady work stops counting months the way a man stops counting stairs. And by the time the sycamores on Paint Street started going yellow, I had been behind that counter half a year and could not have told you one thing that happened outside of it. I asked him once, in October, who owned the place. I'd built a theory by then, the way a man alone builds theories, and my theory was that it was Abel. It made sense. The customers, rough and impossible alike, treated him with a carefulness that went past respect into something older. Hard men whispered around him. The gray gentleman bowed. I figured Abel was a work name, the way a king might tend his own garden in old clothes. Abel was counting the till when I asked. His hand stopped. Just for a second, and in that second I watched fear cross the face of the calmest man I ever met. It went by fast, like a truck on a wet road, but it soaked me all the same. "No," he said, "I keep the counter, same as you'll keep the counter." And then, before I could open my mouth about that word, you'll. The owner isn't a who, Dale, so much as a when. Pray your shift is never then. He went back to counting. Subject closed, nailed shut, painted over. The first Saturday of November, Abel put me on the register. I'd been dreading it and wanting it. He stood me behind the brass till, which was a monster of a machine, old as the crossbow, keys worn blank, and he told me the last rule. The till knows the price, and the till knows the change. Your hands will learn to listen to it. Don't argue with your hands. Around noon, the bell over the door rang, and a man came in who filled the doorway and then some. Canvas coat, kind face, big as a skillet. He smelled like rain on a dog. He bought a spool of plain wire, not silver, and a jar of honey we kept with the normal goods. And when I told him the total, he smiled apologetically, reached into his coat pocket, and laid 4 teeth on the counter. Long, white, rooted, not human, and not trying to be. I looked at the teeth. I looked at my right hand, which had already opened the 3rd drawer down, a drawer I had never once opened, and was counting out change. 2 small teeth, yellowed, and a gray river stone. The man took his change, thanked me, and left. The bell rang behind him. I stood there with my ears roaring, and I reached for an explanation, any explanation, the way I'd reached for one every day for 8 months. There wasn't one. The shelf was empty. I'd used them all up. Winter came down on Chillicothe like a lid on a pot. I bought a good coat, second-hand, and that coat comes back around later, so don't lose it in the shuffle, because I lost it myself, and I should have known better. I got my beard trimmed. I sent Carol a Christmas card with nothing needy in it, just wishing her well, and she sent one back. And I stood it up on the dresser at the Traveler's Rest and felt something in my chest reattach. Abel, meanwhile, was going somewhere. Not sick, exactly. Light. His step had gone quiet even for him, and there were evenings, right at dusk, when he'd stand at the end of a lit row and I'd have sworn the shelf behind showed through his vest, faint, like a signature under one coat of paint. I put it down to my eyes. You'd think, after the teeth, I'd have quit doing that. But a man's habits are the last thing to go. They stay on after him like a smell. "Centuries," he said to me one night, out of nothing, while we rolled coins. "You stop counting after the first one. It's kinder." I laughed because it was the shape of a joke. He didn't. The pack out of Athens County came in the week before Christmas. 3 of them. In the door they were men, big and quiet-footed, in barn coats with the sleeves pushed up, and I'd have made them for farmers if it weren't for the way every jar on the mason shelf tipped toward them at once, like a congregation standing. The oldest had white in his hair and a face like a closed gate. The middle one carried the money, and the young one, 25 maybe, moved like something was pulling at him from under his skin, and his eyes went to the walnut case by the counter the way iron goes to a magnet. They bought honey and rock salt and a case of the plain wire, regular goods. But the whole time the young one stood at that case with his hands jammed in his pockets, staring at the black claw, and I watched his reflection in the old glass, and his reflection was wrong. It lagged him. When he finally turned away, the reflection turned a half-second later, and it turned angrier. I had him figured by the time the bell rang them out. I'd spent 30 years reading men across a counter, and this read easy. He was casing it. The pack was casing the store, and the honey and the salt were cover. I told Abel so that night, proud of myself, keeping my voice down like the shelves had ears, which, I'd come to believe, they did. Abel finished wiping the counter before he answered. "Nobody steals here, Dale." He's thinking about it. Everybody thinks about it. He folded the rag in exact thirds. The claw's been in that case 200 years, and it has been thought about the whole time. Thinking is free. It's the only thing here that is. He looked at me then, and something tired moved behind the Creekwater eyes. "You read the boy right and the reason wrong. You'll learn the difference. The difference is the whole job." 2 nights later, the gate-faced elder came in alone, put a folded stack of bills on the counter thick as a Bible, and bought information. My hands had learned the till by then, and the till took the money, and I stood there and listened to Abel tell that old wolf, in the same weather report voice he'd used for Reyes, where Reyes would be on the 2nd Friday of January, and by what road, and how many she'd bring. The elder thanked him. The bell rang. My ears were roaring again. "She's a customer," I said, when I could. So is he. "She's a person." "She's a customer," Abel said, and there was no cruelty in it, which was the horror. There was no anything in it. "The store doesn't hold a side, Dale. It holds a counter. She bought his road in October. He bought hers tonight. Every knife in that case has been sold to both hands, one after the other, for longer than this country's had a name." He straightened a jar a 1/4 inch. "Kindness is for outside. Now I could stand here and tell you I did something about it. I'll tell you what I actually did instead. I got Reyes's spool of silver ready that Thursday, the way I did every week, and I stood at the counter all evening rehearsing a sentence I could slip her. 6 words. Don't take the river road Friday. She never came in. She never came in again, and her spool sat under the counter with the paper wrapper going soft. And one night near the end of the month I put it back on the shelf, and that was the worst thing my hands ever did, worse than the teeth, because putting it back said done, and I did it anyway. Because the store was warm and the winter was cold and I had learned the calendar. You wanted to know what the store sells. That's what the store sells. It sold me that. And then, before that January was out, came the new moon. Reyes had told me the calendar my first month. They don't come in on the new moon. She said it like the delivery schedule, and like the delivery schedule, it held. On new moon nights the store ran quiet, just the paying dead and the gray gentleman and the hard-used living. So when the bell rang at 9 o'clock and the young wolf from Athens County came through the door alone, on the dark of the moon, with no coat, my stomach dropped through the floorboards before my head knew why. He didn't look pulled at anymore. He looked eaten. He came to the counter with his hands out where I could see them, mannerly, and he laid down everything he had. Money, a watch, a wedding band, not his size, a little sandwich bag of gold teeth that I understood by then to be an inheritance, and not a thing taken. My hands didn't move. The till sat under my palms cold as a well pump. "That's not enough," I said. My voice came out level. To this hour, I don't know how. "I know what it costs." He was looking past me at the case, at the claw with its opinionated edge. "I'll owe. He lets people owe. I've heard it. Hunters owe all the time. He floats them. Ask him." His eyes came back to me, and they were the eyes of a man in water past his depth, going down polite. "It's not for a weapon. You know what silver does to us. That thing in there is the only edge that cuts what I've got growing in me and leaves the rest. Your boss knows. Ask your boss. I'm trying to buy it, mister. I'm standing here trying to buy it." And then he quit asking. His hand came up off that counter and went out toward the glass, slow, the way a man reaches for a rail on a boat that's already going over. That was the line, and I understood it about a heartbeat too late to say so. Thinking is free. Wanting is free. Reaching is not. Behind me I heard Abel come out of the aisles, quick for the first time since I'd known him, and I heard him say, "Boy," just that, in a voice with 100 pounds of warning on it, and I turned my head toward Abel for 1/2 of 1 second. I never saw him touch the case. I'll swear that anywhere. What I got was the light going thick, like the air had been poured full of honey, and every jar in the store tipping toward the counter at once, and a sound stopping. That's the only way I can put it. A sound I hadn't known was there, a low hum under the floor of everything, the store's own breath, and it stopped, the way a barn full of crickets stops, all together, on a signal. The lamp over the door burned red. I put my eyes on my shoes. Abel had drilled it into me, and my body obeyed him even while my mind stood at the window of itself, screaming. The red light talked. I won't write down what it said because it said it in the voice of the person you'd least bear to hear, and whose voice that is depends on the man, and I won't hang mine out on a line for strangers. I kept my eyes down. I kept them down while something crossed the floor of my store with a tread that made the boards sigh, and the cold came up out of the cellar like a tide, and a smell rolled through of cedar and gun oil, and under it that familiar thing, that steamed-off label thing, so strong now it was nearly a word. Then the hum came back. The lamp burned yellow. The young wolf was gone. Not fallen, gone. And I mean gone in a way that reached backward. The money on the counter was still there, but the watch was gone, and the wedding band, and the little bag, as if what had held them had been subtracted out of every hand they'd ever passed through. Later on I understood the sorting of it, and it's the plainest thing about this whole business. Money doesn't belong to anybody. It's been in 10,000 pockets and it remembers none of them, so it stays. A watch a man wound every morning belongs to him down to the spring, and it goes where he goes. There was no mark on the case. There was no mark anywhere. There was only more room in the world than there'd been a minute ago, and the feeling of a name I'd just heard, twice, sliding out of my head like water through fingers. I stood there trying to hold on to it. Boy. Abel had called him Boy because names were already leaving. Abel was gripping the end of the counter, and here is where my last good theory died, the one I'd been keeping in a drawer of my own. Because the calmest man I ever met was gray as dishwater, and his hands were jumping. And whatever he was, however many centuries deep, he was afraid, the same animal way I was afraid. The owner had walked through his store and Abel had kept his eyes on his shoes, same as me. Kings don't do that in their own gardens. He sat down on the stool. Old, suddenly. Paper light. He wasn't stealing, I said. My voice had gravel all through it. He was sick. They were never here to rob you. In December. The elder, the money, all of it. They were trying to buy that thing for him, and they came up short, and the boy came back to owe. I heard my own words drop into place like coins into slots. The reason wrong. You knew all along. I knew, Abel said. The store doesn't float wolves. It floats its own. He looked at his jumping hands and then at me, and the fear in his face made room for something worse. Sorrow. And under the sorrow, apology. My time's about up, Dale. Weeks, maybe. There are things you'll need to know about the till. I know the till. You know the drawers your hands have opened. He nodded at it, that brass monster with its keys worn blank. Open the third one down, all the way. It's time you counted the float. I pulled the drawer out to its stop, past the teeth, past the river stones, and the back half of it was brass. Tokens. Hundreds of them, worn smooth, big as $50, and on every single one that same design I could never quite make out. A door, or a mouth. My knees went. I dug like a dog, coin after identical coin, and I found it a dozen deep. Mine. Don't ask me how a man knows one smooth brass circle from 400 others, but a thumb has a memory 30 years long, and there was the little ding in the rim from the tile I dropped in '05. It was still warm. Abel talked for an hour that night, with the close sign turned and the lamps low, and I'm going to give it to you the way I got it. Plain. In March of 1993, I walked into the store. Not this store on Paint Street, because the store wasn't on Paint Street then. It was in a strip of shops in Parkersburg, West Virginia, where I'd gone to bid a hospital job I had no business bidding. A young man with a truck and a ladder and $1,100 of credit. I don't remember it. That's included. Abel said it gentle, like a doctor. Forgetting is included, Dale. Nobody carries the store around in their head for 30 years. It would spoil the merchandise. What I bought was in the third drawer down. Luck. 30 years of it, steady as a well. And the price was on the back end because the store extends terms. The store is happy to extend terms. Everything I built with that token, collected in one autumn, with interest. The warehouse, the contracts, the house on Bellevue. Carol was not on the bill, Abel said, and made himself look at me while he said it. She was interest. And the balance, he said, is standing behind that counter. Must be honest, must be finished. The sign wasn't asking for a resume. It was checking the paperwork. The store had finished me itself, on schedule, and then held the door. I asked him if he'd known, that first rainy day, when he handed me the broom. He said he'd known for 30 years. He'd rung me up. Then he told me his own in 3 sentences, and I could hear how worn they were, like stairs. A counting house in Boston, a coat bought off a dead man's rack in 1741, with a warm brass circle in the pocket. 40 years of ships that always came home, and then one October when every ship on the ledger found a clause. He'd been keeping the counter since before there was an Ohio to put a store in, and he'd kept it through the whole life of the country without ever once voting in it. Then who's the owner? I said. Say it straight for once. Who runs this place? Nobody, Abel said. That's not me dodging you, Dale. That's the answer the whole world will give you from now on. And the joke of it is, they'll mean you. He tapped the counter. The one who keeps the till is nobody. It's part of the wage. Watch. I watched. Not that night, but through February I watched. Dot started calling me Hun. Just Hun, warm as ever, with a little squint behind it, like I was a regular whose name kept slipping off the hook. The pawn man on 2nd Street looked straight through me. In March I sent a card up to Dayton. Nothing needy in it, same as at Christmas. And 11 days later it came back to the store with my own handwriting on the front and a strip of yellow tape across it. No such person at this address. That was my hand on the envelope and my name in the corner, and the post office had gone looking for the man who wrote it and come up empty. I sat on the bed at the Traveler's Rest and held it and made myself breathe. And I'm not going to write down what that cost because some prices are between a man and the till. The customers knew me now, that was the strange comfort. The gate-faced elder from Athens County came in for salt in February, and he stopped in front of me, and he looked at me a long moment with those patient yellow-brown eyes, and he nodded. Once. The way you nod at the new judge in an old courthouse. Whatever his grief was, and I'd priced his grief myself, It didn't reach across the counter. Nothing reaches across the counter. That's the store. Abel left on the first warm evening in April. No ceremony. He counted the till with me one last time, hands steady again, and he hung his vest on the hook by the cellar door. And he shook my hand, which broke a rule, except I understood by then that he wasn't a customer anymore, and neither was I. His hand felt like a page. "Keep to the lit rows," he said, "until you don't." He walked into the brown dark past the last bulb, upright, unhurried, a small, neat man going deeper into his own store. And the dark didn't swallow him. That's not the word. It filed him. Somewhere out along an aisle I will not walk for a long time yet, he went thin. And then he was a place where the shelves showed through. And then the hum under the floor rose a quarter note, the way a house sounds when the furnace accepts something. And I was the only one at the counter. I run the store now. You understand that's not a confession, because a confession needs somebody it can be pinned on. Say my name out loud a week from now, and listen to how little it holds on to. Then go back over everything I've told you and count how many times a man handed something warm to somebody who was finished, and see if it doesn't come out a different story on the second pass. The work is the work. Hunters buy silver and salt and roads. The other kind buy honey and songs and the mason jars that tip when you walk by them. Everyone pays. The lamp burns red some nights and I study my shoes, and the voice behind me uses Carol's hello now, and I have learned to let it go by like weather. The till teaches my hands one drawer at a time. There are 9 drawers. I have opened 5. Here's the last of it, and then I'm done. Because a bell only means something if you stop talking when it rings. Last week I counted the float, the way Abel taught me. Every token turned and stacked. Mine was gone. I went through all 400 with my thumb, twice, hunting the little ding in the rim from '05, and it was not there, and the count came out right anyway, and the till sat warm under my palms like a hen. I stood there a while. Then I went and got my winter coat off the hook, the good second-hand one, and I felt along the pocket, and I'll be honest with you, my thumb got there ahead of the rest of me and already knew what it was going to find. Round and smooth and warm as a hand. I could have put it back in the drawer. I stood at the till with it for a long time, and the hum under the floor didn't say anything, because the store doesn't make you do a single thing. It just stocks the shelves and holds the counter and waits, patient as winter, while you become the kind of person who does it on your own. Tonight it's raining. March again, and the rain has that mean edge on it that finds the gap at your throat and settles in. There's a young man across the street, under the vape shop's awning. He's been there since 5, shoulders up around his ears, doing the arithmetic I used to do at Dots, and coming out with the same answer. Wet through. Finished. I watched him from the window while I closed out the register, and my hands finished the count without me. I'm standing in the doorway now, under the yellow lamp, with the coat folded over my arm. The rain is loud on the awnings. He sees me. He's coming across, because a warm doorway is the whole world to a man with nowhere, and I know exactly what that doorway looks like from his side of the street. Take the coat, I tell him. You'll want it. Spring's late this year. He holds it like he's forgotten what to do when something goes right. I can't pay you back, he says. It's free, I say. Kindness is for outside. He gets one arm in, then the other. It fits him. Of course it fits him. He thanks me twice and goes off north up Paint Street with his hand already finding the pocket, and behind me, under the floor, soft as a cat, the store begins to purr.